Hello and welcome to the forvirginia.org podcast. I am your host, Michael Wade, and this is our initial episode of what will hopefully become a weekly newscast for Virginia-specific news. Forvirginia.org is a state political action committee. Our goal is to elect and help support progressive candidates for all levels of Virginia local and statewide elections. We are a state PAC, not a federal one at this time, so we are not involved with congressional, Senate, or presidential elections. So we'll be able to avoid some of the more contentious news that's going on right now. Basically, what we are doing is trying to find and support local candidates for city council, mayor races, school board, and as well as the Virginia governor races and stuff like that in 2017. So basically the reason why we're starting this today is because our organization has its roots in the Bernie Sanders campaign, as a lot of people have gotten involved with politics over the past year due to Senator Sanders' involvement in the Democratic race for president. With his race basically over, we want to make sure that all of the people who are involved with his political campaign, grassroots level organizations, stuff like that. We had a lot of involvement with the primary process here in Virginia and with the delegate process for the state conventions and the congressional district conventions and the state convention as well. A lot of our friends and people that we have been working with were in Philadelphia last week for the Democratic convention. And, there's a lot of consternation between the burn your bus people and the people that aren't burning your bus. So again, focusing on state politics, we're going to kind of avoid some of that controversy and focus on what we can do to build a base in the state of Virginia in 2016 and beyond. And really the main focus right now with everyone's involvement with the political race, in the presidential race rather, there's still a lot of stuff going on. So, for example, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Suffolk, Harrisonburg, Richmond, probably other places that I'm not aware of yet that are having these locality elections, and we don't want people getting cynical or disillusioned. As they say, despair is not an option. We want to make sure that people are still involved in the political process, working for the issues that got them involved with Senator Sanders, and making sure that we're still supporting people at that level. Some of the conversations that have been going on over Facebook and elsewhere the past couple of days with regards to the third party candidates for president, such as Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. My take on it, rather, is that with the third party showing up every 4 years to try and win presidential races when there's not a lot of involvement with them at the state and local level. So basically here in the peninsula where I'm based out of in Hampton, Virginia, we had a lady in the Green Party run for state delegate slot last year in 2015. And then some of you may know we had a man named Sarvis, libertarian candidate who ran for governor against McAuliffe in 2013. So whether it's third party or within the Democratic Party, progressives need to be involved at the local level, whether it's the PTA or the school board or city council and stuff like that. Basically, the reason why we started our organization is to help provide some support to some of these people that want to run for office. Basically, as Senator Sanders has made the call for. We had a woman here in Hampton this spring who ran for city council as a Green candidate. Let me back that up. There are no candidates, political parties involved with city council elections in Virginia. Everything's nonpartisan. I know her personally as a Green Party member, and talking to her following one of the Hampton candidate town halls, she told me basically that she had spent $100 on her campaign. I was like, what? So she spent $100 on her campaign. She literally was using old pallets, for forklift pallets, that kind of thing. she repurposed those as her campaign sign and had them painted and leaning up against telephone poles. Basically, is what she did. And this woman got over 6,500 votes for city council, and it was basically at large election with like 5 or 6 candidates, and she was within 2,500 of actually getting a seat on the council. So for someone like her to be able to spend nothing basically and come that close to actually getting elected to a city council of, Hampton's not a small city, but for her to be able to have that kind of success with that little investment, so to speak, we thought that if we could form an organization that could provide support for candidates, whether monetary or logistical. I'm involved in IT, so there's a lot of things I can do to help candidates out. There's a lot of other people that have organizing skills, activist skills that could be involved with that. And one of the things that the left has a challenge with compared to the right is our, for lack of a better term, lack of organization, a lack of cohesiveness, a duplication of effort, so to speak. So I'm relatively new to the political realm. I've been heavily invested in national politics for several decades, I guess I would say. As a person who was basically came of age before the George W. presidency and saw how things go. Like now, as a approaching 40 years old, I have 2 daughters. I'm taking the steps to become involved, and I'm hoping to build an organization that helps people get involved and helps provide, like I said, logistical support for people. And again, what we're doing with this podcast and what we hope to do what we hope to do is provide a counterbalance to the right-wing talk radio, your Hannitys, your Rush Limbaugh, stuff like that. We have very few people on the less successful media on the left. I mean, you've got Tom Hartman, you've got Rachel Maddow, and some other people at the national level, but within Virginia specifically, you have very little, at least that I'm aware of. I know that there is a man by the name of John Fredericks who has a daily talk radio show that's based out of Chesapeake and broadcasts across the Commonwealth and parts of North Carolina that does a very good job of interviewing local and statewide candidates, delegates, people involved at the political level throughout the state. But obviously, as a conservative and as a hardcore Trump supporter as well, it's kind of maddening listening to him and the way he frames some of the arguments, especially with regards to what we consider the progressive argument towards things like, income inequality, racial justice, or environmental justice. And so I'm hoping to lay the groundwork here today for something that can continue and provide news information as well as coordinating activities. As a PAC, we can directly support candidates, so I'm not going to try and hide our agenda, if you will. Obviously, we have a left-wing bias. I'm going to be proud of that. This is not, at the same token, going to be propagandizing or trying to present a one-sided view. I may fail in that, but I'm going to try and maintain some kind of journalistic credibility as to what we can do and how we present that. So we will present, I use the word liberal. It's gotten a lot of bad press over the past 30 years from the right wing. It seems that the term progressive literally means the same thing as far as I'm concerned, but doesn't carry as much of the baggage that most of the American population seem to carry with it. So, a lot of people still think that, liberal is a bad term, but you ask them if they're progressive and they'll say yes. So however you want to take that. So basically, our goal for right now is to present a little 30-minute weekly news dump roundup, maybe get some interviews in the future with people. We know people in Hampton, and we've met people throughout the state with our work on the Sanders campaign and on Facebook and so forth. So eventually, you won't be listening to me talk for half an hour. We'll have other people, again, probably won't be directly involved with any of the congressional campaigns or Senate races or any of the national level federal federal level seats, but we will try to get people that are on the ground, whether they're involved in activism or in the media or in politics, and so forth. So hopefully what we want to do is we want to, again, provide a base of support for people that have progressive values and support the progressive stance on things in order to encourage them to run for office, encourage them, give them the support structure, the networking that they need in order to be successful and run for these offices. So again, local elections 2016, there's a lot going on in the state coming up this November. Whether or not you will vote for Hillary or you decide you want to vote for third party, there's still other things that are on the ballot this November that we can all agree on. And one of those things is the Right to Work Amendment that will be on the ballot, that was put there by the Republicans, and it's called Right to Work. And the way that I think it should be framed is right to work for less. The economic policies of right to work, of union bashing, as we've seen in other states in America, like in Wisconsin with Scott Walker, and Brownback in Kansas may not be a good example of that. Definitely of bad economic policies with the tax cuts, but to focus on right to work, there's lots of research and analysis by economists. The one that comes to mind right off the top is Robert Reich. He's got some great videos that he's put together about why this stuff is bad for unions and bad for the working class families. And so Virginia has been a right to work state for the past, I want to say 70 years, maybe plus or minus 10. So Virginia's been a right to work state for ever, basically longer than I've been alive, obviously. And so what the GOP has done, and I say the Virginia GOP, is they have put an amendment on the ballot for the Virginia Constitution to put right to work in the Virginia Constitution instead of just being a law. And I think there's a couple of reasons why this is probably happening. One is because the right wing crushed to kill unions, not only at the private companies, but eventually to do the same thing to public unions, like your state employees. So I think they fear that this change is coming within the nation, rather. We've what's going on with the GOP and the Democratic Party outreach to Republicans in this election, I think is showing a shift of what's acceptable politics in this country. And so I think that maybe part of this might be just timing, or maybe there's something else going on. But basically, they want to lock this in so that we can't undo it, 70 years of right to work. So that will be on the ballot this November, and we need to defeat it. So there's a lot of information we'll be getting out to you guys in the next coming weeks, hopefully, before the election, in order to spread the word on that and make sure that when people go to the polls and they see right to work on the ballot, that they know that it's not what they say it is. It's kind of these Frank Luntz things where they call things the opposite of what they really are, and right to work is probably one of the most egregious examples of that. So right to work for less, or right to work is wrong. Right to work for less is wrong. So we need to make sure that we frame those arguments, we frame the discussion of that amendment in those terms. So that will be on the November ballot. There will be several congressional seats that are up for election this November. Congressional seats up for election that we need to win. Not only do we need to change the House of Representatives, we don't have any senatorial elections in Virginia this year, but the House of Representatives, we have to change that. And we're hoping that we're seeing the ground building of a lot of other organizations that are going to help us at the same time in Virginia politics. So 2017, every seat in the House of Delegates will be up for election. And last year, 2015, we had 140 elections in Virginia, 100 House of Delegate seats, 40 state Senate seats. Every single incumbent that ran for re-election in 2015 won. We had, I believe it was 3 seats that were open that, well, 3 of the open seats where the incumbent wasn't running for re-election actually switched hands. So the Democrats picked up 2 and the Republican side switched one of those rather. So we picked up net 1 seat. And that one pickup in 2015 has allowed us to prevent a Republican supermajority. And what that means is that if the governor vetoes a law that the Republicans pass in the General Assembly, if the House of Delegates has a supermajority, which I want to say is 66 votes, if they have 66 votes in the House of Delegates, they can override that veto and pass that law through. Similar thing in the House of Representatives, if you remember your civics lessons from high school. So because we took that 1 seat in 2015, we had enough people to prevent that supermajority, and Governor McAuliffe was able to veto 39 bills, relating to vaginal ultrasound, defunding Planned Parenthood. Had a list of this stuff. So that's why that's important, and hopefully we can change from just blocking a supermajority to a majority. I don't think realistically that it will happen in 2017. Funny story, Tommy Norment, he is the majority leader for the, I want to say, state Senate. He's based out of Williamsburg. He's the majority leader. He did a debate at Christopher Newport University before the election, but he basically got up there and said that he didn't think that the House of Delegates was going to turn blue in his lifetime. And when he said that, part of me thought, he's probably right because of gerrymandering. And, the other part of me inside took that as a personal challenge. So I'd like to challenge everybody to do the same, and let's turn the House of Delegates blue. We've already got a tie in the Senate, or maybe 1920. I know that the Medicaid expansion hinged on 1 vote, and that didn't get through because somebody resigned their seat. Maybe we'll get back to that in another episode, but right now, it's very important that we turn Virginia blue and we get some of these things passed. We'll talk about the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, the Obama's Clean Power Plan, opposition to that. Talk about Medicaid expansion. I mean, it's dead for now, but we're not going to get that unless we can change some seats in the House. Some of our friends from the Sanders grassroots, most notably Tom Brock, has started a Progressive House VA PAC, which basically is aligned with the same idea of not only turning the House blue, but turning the House dark blue. So we'll hopefully talk with Tom in a future episode and get some updates on what they're doing. But right now we're going to take a real quick short break, and we'll be right back with the For Virginia podcast. And we're back from the break. This is Mike Wade, not the Mike Wade, Henrico County Sheriff that's running for Congress in CD4, but a different Mike Wade. I'm Mike Brandon Wade. Thanks for listening this far into the episode. I hope you stay with us for the next 10 minutes. Before the break, we had talked about our ability to prevent a supermajority by the GOP in the General Assembly. So some of the things that were vetoed last year, included reversal of McAuliffe's ban on guns in state office building, a so-called religious freedom bill, basically allowing religious organizations to discriminate against same-sex couples. They wanted to put some protections in place to allow people to discriminate. I mentioned Planned Parenthood. There was also some Confederate monument protections, immigration regulations, and the Clean Power Plan and the coal tax credits. And I'd originally planned on going into some of the news that's been going on lately, but since we've already been down this road, and thank you for coming with me, the coal tax credits. I just want to give you I want to talk about this for the next couple of minutes to give you guys a concrete example of how things have been working in the state and why it's so important that we act. I got into a rather one-sided Facebook war with one of our elected state representatives out in the southwestern part of the state, Ben Chafin, who basically came out and said on his Facebook wall that he was glad that the Republicans, they had passed an extension of the coal tax credits in the General Assembly. And McAuliffe vetoed it. It never happened. But I went and dug into what these coal tax credits were about, and I think it pretty much demonstrates the kind of cronyism, back-scratching, whatever you want to call it, that exists in politics, not just in Virginia, but in politics in general. And I think this is one of the reasons why Sanders' campaign spoke to me, and one of the reasons why I think it's so important for us to act in Virginia. So a little bit of background. So the coal tax credits were originally passed in the late 90s with the goal of providing incentives to not only coal extraction companies, but to the power utilities such as Dominion to buy the coal and use it. So there was an employment credit for the coal mining companies, and there was a consumption credit basically for Dominion, and I'm not sure if there's any other power companies in the States. And it was $460 million between, I want to say 97, 95, somewhere when I was in high school basically, up until 2014, 2015 when the credits expired. And again, the goal of these tax credits were basically to keep jobs in the state. And what happened is that the jobs disappeared. The coal companies in Virginia had about 8,000 jobs back when these subsidies started, tax credits rather. And today they're a couple thousand. I want to say less than 4. So half the coal jobs in the state disappeared during this time, while the state of Virginia basically gave coal companies $500 million. We know why that happened, because coal is a dirty fuel, and it's not just Virginia. It's not Obama's war on coal. It's not the Clean Power Plan. It's that natural gas fracking has made natural gas so cheap nobody wants to buy coal. It's that the regulations, the EPA regulations for power plants, coal burning plants, make it less cost effective. Me as a lefty who prides environmentalism over capitalism, that's a good thing. The problem is the jobs. And so the state looked at this in 2012, maybe even before that, to see whether or not these tax subsidies were having the intended effect. And the state audit board, there's a report, I've got links I'll provide, basically said this doesn't work. It doesn't work. In the meantime, these companies are making millions, or taking millions. The one example that I'll give you, Alpha Natural Resources. So these guys purchased Massey Energy in 2011. Massey had the Upper Branch mine explosion, which killed like more than a dozen people. So Alpha laid off 4,000 employees and filed for bankruptcy with $4.2 billion in debt. After they filed for bankruptcy, they tried to seek approval with the Justice Department to pay out $11 million, actually it's 11.9, so $12 million in executive performance bonuses after they laid off 4,000 people. So I got my notes here, and just to clarify what I said earlier, the coal tax credits started in 98. They were $610 million. 251 mines closed. Jobs were at 11,100 when this started, and they're down to 2,800 today. So what started this was that Ben Chafin said, great news, 1,000 jobs are going to be saved by extending these coal tax credits. And what I found out through the great work that's done by the Virginia Public Access Project, VPAP, Alpha Natural Resources, the same company that's taken some of these $610 million in tax credits, that laid off 4,000 workers, filed bankruptcy, and then tried to give $12 million to their executives for performance bonuses. This same company spent over $2.2 million in political contributions to Virginia lawmakers since 2003, which is as far back as VPAP goes. Chafin, who's only been in office for 2 years, has gotten over $12,500 from them. That right there is a conflict of interest that we can't tolerate anymore. And I'm not saying anything bad personally about Senator Chafin. I think he's probably doing what he thinks is best for his constituents in order to save jobs. But the problem is it doesn't work. And the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee in 2012 said that the credits may not be effectively promoting coal production and employment because of changes in coal mining are unaffected by the credits. That's a direct quote from the report. So I'm not saying that he's beholden to his corporate donors, but it sure looks that way. So we've got to figure out different policies that we can put in place in Virginia in order to help stuff like that. And me personally, I think that renewable energy is the way to go with that. I talked about the RGGI, the Renewable Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a consortium of several states in the region that all work together on renewable energies. And you look at somebody like North Carolina that has net metering policies that favor rooftop solar, residential and commercial solar policies, and they have tons of jobs. They've got companies like Solar Power, Solar City, that will go in there and provide loans to consumers to get solar panels, pay people to install them, and then basically the company keeps the loan on the equipment, and they sell the power to the homeowner and sell back the excess power to the utilities. But because of Dominion's clout in Virginia and their net metering policies, we can't have that in Virginia. And there's a lot more that we're going to get into in the coming weeks about Dominion and their political influencing at the state level. Daily Press had a great editorial about 2 or 3 months ago with regards to the McDonald's political corruption case. Basically, you may not know this, but in the state of Virginia, there are no limits on campaign contributions. If I'm giving money to a federal candidate like Sean Brown in the 2nd CD here, where I live, I'm limited to $2,700 in donations. Not that I have that kind of money to give to a political campaign, but that's the limit for federal campaign contributions. Virginia doesn't have that. You can give as much money as you want to anybody in the state, running for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, House of Delegates, state senate, mayor, anything. You know, all this stuff we've been talking about this past half hour. So I've got an article here from dailyprogress.com that it's got some good news about how some of these lobbying efforts are starting to roll back as far as the gift giving and stuff like that. I know there was a whole lot of some concern about Tim Kaine and his $120,000, I believe it was, that he accepted while he was governor here. So a whole lot we got to talk about in the coming weeks, and I hope that you will join us and help us with that. So I want to wrap things up for this week and thank everybody for tuning in. If you made it this far on our initial pilot broadcast, podcast, video, whatever you want to call it, I appreciate you making it this far. I look forward to hearing your feedback, and if there's anybody that wants to participate in this conversation for next week, I would be more than happy to hear from you and work with you on that. So again, my name is Michael Brandon Wade. This is the For Virginia podcast. So head on over to forvirginia.org, sign up for our site, contribute to our Act Blue page, help us help progressives in the state of Virginia get elected at every level of government, and keep doing what you're doing. We will be back next week